Desperate CEO reveals his amazing solution when a delivery driver unexpectedly speaks 4 languages. Tom Reynolds stood at the edge of his office, staring blankly at the wall of glass that overlooked Silicon Valley. The sun had dipped behind the horizon, and the city lights flickered to life, mirroring the chaos churning inside him. His company, a legacy built by his father, teetered on the brink of bankruptcy, and each passing day squeezed his chest with heavy, unrelenting pressure. The board's whispers grew louder, and he could almost hear their doubts echo in his mind. Is he fit to lead? As he prepared for yet another difficult board meeting, a nondescript delivery driver named Alex entered the lobby, handling a stack of packages with an effortless grace that caught Tom's eye. Before he could think, he heard Alex seamlessly switch between 4 languages while addressing a bewildered intern. Tom's heart raced not simply out of surprise but something deeper, an unsettling mix of hope and desperation. What could someone from a seemingly disadvantaged background have to offer? More than he had dared to imagine, the moral dilemma hit him hard. Should he ignore what he had just witnessed and stick to the traditional route his father paved? A route that seemed to narrow with every significant choice, and both the company and his reputation hung in the balance. Could he step out of his comfort zone, or would that decision be perceived as reckless? The stakes felt impossibly high. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Tom's tension soared. With each moment spent contemplating Alex's background, he felt an internal conflict brewing. This young man, who had traversed adversities with resilience, could represent the very change he needed to seize opportunities for the company, but would the board accept someone like him? Tom felt his heart race with the realization that choosing Alex would mean revolutionizing not just their product but their very culture, something his father had long dictated. Did he really have the courage to confront this ingrained tradition? The thought gnawed at him as he prepared for the client meeting. He found himself pacing the floor, muscles tense, breath shallow. The doubt inundated him. He could almost hear the board members scoffing at this favoritism, condemning his judgment. The lines between personal and professional blurred perilously close, and he wrestled with ghosts of his father's expectations, a grim reminder that fulfilling such a legacy could ruin him or usher in a new path for both men. And just when the pressure became almost unbearable, Alex caught his eye in the hustle of the office, an unexpected partner brimming with untapped potential. Standing at the precipice of change, Tom was faced with a truth so piercing. Would he risk everything to fumble through the unknown with Alex, shatter the prejudice that restrained him, or would he pull back at the last moment, protecting the status quo? In that crucial instant before they were to pitch to the client, who would dictate their future, Tom stumbled upon Alex's confidential proposal, an idea born from his experiences and struggles to redefine their mission. The thought sank in. Presenting it could sway everything, yet what if it shattered his chances and the board's trust? Doubt seeped in, twisting like ice in his veins. As whispers of imminent betrayal began to haunt him, Tom faced the unbearable weight of not just business decisions but the legacy that had defined his very existence. He could either seize this fragile opportunity or watch it dissolve into the night, leaving him with the haunting realization that he might choose the path that damns them both. The boardroom felt suffocating the moment Tom stepped inside. His heart thudded in rhythm with the clicks of pens and quiet murmurs among the directors stationed around the glossy table. He could sense the cold, calculating gazes that evaluated his every move, reading doubt where he yearned to show confidence. For a fleeting moment, he stopped, allowing the echo of Alex's voice in multiple languages to resonate in his mind, a reminder of the possibility he desperately needed to grasp. As he settled into his seat, Tom forced his gaze on the agenda laid out before him. The proposal Alex had crafted hummed in his pocket like a silent alarm, beckoning him to take a leap of faith, yet the shadows of his predecessor loomed large. Every beat of an anxious heart felt tied to a legacy rooted in tradition and conservatism. Could he truly break from it? The board's chair, a gray-haired man with a tendency to tug at his collar when agitated, cleared his throat. "Tom, we're in dire straits. Our revenue projections are dismal. You need to lay out a plan that reassures us of your leadership." Tom had practiced his pitch, crafted a story laced with hope about potential partnerships and new technologies. Yet, standing there, the words felt hollow. He could hear Alex's voice beneath the layer of polished corporate speech, grasping for understanding and innovation that came from experience rather than textbook knowledge. Struggling between the desire to placate the board and his urge to forge a new path, he felt an unsettling choice washing over him. "I believe," he began, a tremor of uncertainty clouding his tone, "that it is time for radical change in our approach." The room stiffened at the declaration, heads tilting curiously. "We need to redefine our mission, integrate diverse voices into our culture. I propose we leverage new talent from unexpected places. For instance, I've recently met someone who could be pivotal in that transition." He hesitated, gnawing at his tongue. "Alex, our delivery driver." The room erupted into murmurs, eyebrows shot up, and skeptics leaned forward. "Tom, with all due respect, we can't hinge our future on a delivery driver. We need a tech-savvy solution rooted in experience." The interruption cut through him like glass. Tom clenched his fists beneath the table. The dismissal stung, but it also ignited something within him, a stubborn fire pushing him to stand his ground. "What you see as a risk, I see as an opportunity. Alex's multicultural insights could revolutionize our client engagement strategies. He speaks the languages of our consumers, their aspirations. Isn't that invaluable?" Silence enveloped the room, the air thick with tension. Every director was connected to their interests, consequences blending with the remnants of what felt like rebellion. He could feel Alex's heartbeat in his own, urging him to embrace this moment of vulnerability. Wasn't their current direction itself the truest risk? With a surge of adrenaline, Tom pressed onward. "If we fail to adapt, we are simply counting down the days to our demise. Are we willing to face that truth? All in the name of outdated traditions?" The chairperson narrowed his eyes, deliberating. Tom understood they might not just be evaluating Alex but weighing Tom's very commitment to growth. Would they reject his idea or recognize the need to evolve? The clock ticked eerily, seconds feeling like hours. It was more than a pitch, it was a plunge into his conviction, a discovery of who he was willing to become. The whisper of a decision loomed large, and he could not escape its weight. Just when the silence seemed insurmountable, one director spoke. "We will consider it, but we need more than passion. We need a solid plan with metrics and feedback." Tom's pulse raced. He knew this was only the beginning. Presenting Alex's vision would require more than courage, it demanded a strategic approach to meld ideas into executable plans. As the room resumed a feigned calm, Tom felt the resolve building within him to not only defend Alex but to harness his potential. Outside, the city pulsed with life, each light a beacon for change, and with it, an inevitability began to take root in Tom's mind. He couldn't turn back. The board's response had left an unsettling air of ambiguity, but it had also ignited a sense of purpose. How did one man set off a revolution? However, he would soon discover that not all revolutions come without battle scars. As he left the boardroom, he understood that something deeper was looming. Unraveling the intricate weave of expectations would demand daring choices that threatened not just the company but his identity itself. Was he ready to confront those within his circle who valued tradition over innovation? The moment had come to reshape the legacy handed down to him, or to fall into the very trap of history he feared driving him to a choice between safety and the unknown. The path forward lay shrouded in mystery, and Tom's truth awaited its moment to be revealed. The sun dipped low over the city, casting elongated shadows as Tom navigated the bustling streets toward the cafe where he and Alex had agreed to meet. He had been revisiting the board's reactions over and over in his mind, parsing their disbelief and understanding that he was no longer just a right-hand man but a beacon of possibility. A mixture of exhilaration and dread twisted in his stomach. Each step toward the cafe felt like a step deeper into uncharted territory. Upon entering, Tom spotted Alex seated in a corner, a tattered notebook spread before him, jotting down ideas. The vibrant decor of the cafe contrasted sharply with the weight on Tom's shoulders. Alex looked up, offering a warm, unguarded smile that pushed back some of the evening's heaviness. "Hey, Tom. Did you talk to them?" Alex's optimism radiated through the air, an energy Tom desperately wanted to harness. "Yes," Tom replied, taking a seat opposite him. "They're considering it, but they need a plan." The words tasted bitter as they left his lips, as if they were a concession rather than an opportunity. Alex leaned in, his eyes wide with excitement. "What's next? This is a chance for us to prove what we can do." Each word from Alex seemed to burn away Tom's uncertainty, igniting new flames of ideas in his mind. "I've been thinking. We can't just present your story, we have to lay out a strategy that shows how your insights can translate into tangible results," Tom said, a newfound determination infusing his voice. As he spoke, he felt the weight of those expectations turn from a burden into momentum. "What did you have in mind?" Alex asked, his brows knitting together in concentration. Tom hesitated, reflecting. "We need to showcase not just what you bring to the table but how that fits into the larger vision for our clients. We can conduct a survey using your multilingual skills to connect with our diverse customers. Your perspective could inform our marketing direction in a whole new way. Like, gather feedback directly from the communities." Alex's eyes lit up, and Tom could see the connection sparking. This was more than just about ideas, it was about empowering Alex to step into a broader role. "Exactly. Let's draft questions, pick a few key clients, and start building those relationships," Tom proposed, scribbling some thoughts in the margins of Alex's notes. "Do you think that will be enough for them?" Alex asked, tilting his head. There was trepidation in his voice that mirrored Tom's own worries. Tom clenched his jaw, picturing the board's critical eyes. "I don't know. But it's a starting point. We need to show them that innovation doesn't always come from traditional backgrounds, sometimes it's right under their noses." The fire within him blazed brighter. The talk with Alex transformed the fear that had gripped him into a focused clarity. They spent hours brainstorming, ideas pouring from their minds. Tom felt alive. This was collaboration, not the solitary game of chess he had been playing in the boardroom. Each suggestion Alex made was another thread woven into a fabric of potential that could genuinely shift the trajectory of their company. As the sun set and the cafe emptied, the outline of a plan began to take shape, a bridge spanning between two worlds: the entrenched corporate culture and the vibrant potential from the streets. They would not just present Alex, they would present a vision for the future. But as Tom packed his notebook, an unsettling thought lingered. What if the board was unwilling to see past their biases? He looked over at Alex, whose focus was unwavering. Could they truly convince the board that revolution was necessary? Could they lead others to face the unknown too? Just as Tom began to voice these doubts, the cafe door swung open, and a harsh draft blew through, bringing with it a moment of clarity. "We have no choice but to try," he said, his jaw set. The next day would likely offer its own set of challenges, dark clouds of skepticism overshadowing their burgeoning aspirations. But as they walked out of the cafe together, a palpable thrill ran through Tom, armed with a newfound collaboration and the echoes of possibility ringing in his ears. He knew their journey was only beginning. How, then, would they prove that a single voice, echoing from an unexpected place, could reshape a company's very core? The answer seemed elusive, but one thing was clear: the battle against antiquated perceptions was just heating up. The next morning dawned with a tang of caffeine in the air, setting Tom's mind racing as he brewed a pot of coffee in his tiny kitchen. The rhythmic gurgle of the coffee machine matched the thumping in his chest, each splash a reminder of the urgency to demonstrate the value of Alex's vision. As he stood there, palms resting on the counter, Tom confronted the possibility hovering just out of reach. What if they didn't convince the board? What if their efforts were dismissed as idealistic folly? With a sigh, he poured himself a cup and took a breath, mentally shifting gears. This wasn't just about today's meeting. It was about altering the narrative of their company, redefining its identity in a market that had long moved past reactiveness. He envisioned not just a presentation but a movement. As he drove toward the office, streetlights glimmered like potential, the asphalt beneath him a track for his determination. He would need to be the catalyst, to persuade Alex that their collaboration could shake the foundations of their industry. Internal fear waged war against growing confidence. He was no longer just supporting a bold idea, he was the leader. Tom arrived at the office with a rush of adrenaline, his head swirling with strategy. He found Alex sitting at his desk, flipping through a pile of papers with an intensity that made Tom's heart swell. Approaching him, Tom opened up about his plan to harness their network. "I think we can extend our reach. Let us leverage social media to create a splash before we present. We can showcase a few testimonials from community members who resonate with your approach," Tom suggested, watching Alex's eyes brighten at the prospect. "You mean, we showcase their stories?" Alex's voice held amazement, yet there was an undercurrent of doubt peeking through. "Do you really think they care?" "More than ever," Tom replied, leaning closer. "The board is already on edge. We can use that unease to our advantage. This could spotlight the real impact of your ideas, not just in theory, but in practice." As they drafted posts together, the atmosphere transformed, buzzing with creativity and a fervor that drove Tom past his reservations. He could sense the shift. This wasn't merely about selling a concept, it was about influencing emotions, steering perspectives. Later, during their lunch break, Tom received a notification from the office front desk. A neighbor from his building was making a delivery to the office, an unexpected guest who quickly piqued Tom's interest. When Maria, the delivery driver, entered, her vibrancy brought a breath of fresh air, even as she deftly maneuvered between languages with the finesse of a seasoned diplomat. "Do you need help with the delivery?" Tom asked, noting her ease as she conversed in Spanish with a colleague, then switched to Mandarin as she relayed instructions to another. "I got it." She laughed, a kaleidoscope of energy. "But it's sometimes rough out there. People don't notice folks like me until we speak their language." Tom's thoughts spiraled. Here was a living example of his theory: power resides in the voices that go unheard. "What if we feature you in our campaign? Your story could illuminate the importance of connecting with different communities," he proposed excitedly, catching Alex's eye. Maria's brow arched quizzically, but she smiled. "You think people care about my life on the road?" "Absolutely." Tom's voice was firm, fueled by an idea he believed could galvanize their vision into action. "You could be our gateway to empathy." As Maria walked away, an electric tension buzzed in Tom's veins, a revelation burgeoning inside him. The more voices they collected, the more compelling their argument would be. What had started as a desire to elevate Alex had now morphed into a broader tapestry, and they stood ready to craft it. But as he settled back to brainstorm with Alex that evening, dread gnawed at him anew. Would the board truly embrace this fresh perspective, or would they recoil at the thought of outsiders influencing their operations? Determined to find out, Tom and Alex steeled themselves for an uphill battle. Little did they know, the board's reaction would unveil more than mere prejudices, it would challenge everything they believed about their place in the company. Could one shared story be the spark that ignited a transformation? Tom was about to find out, yet speculation stung his thoughts like a wasp. What would happen next? Tom awoke the next morning with a knot in his stomach that refused to loosen. The ticking clock on the wall echoed with a rhythmic urgency, each tick a reminder of the looming presentation. He sipped his coffee, but the usual robust bitterness tasted muted, overshadowed by a growing anxiety. Today was pivotal, a crossroads he had long contemplated but never fully grasped. As he prepared for the office, doubt nibbled at him. What if the board ridiculed their campaign? The thought was unsettling, yet a quiet voice countered, urging him to focus on the impact they could have. Shoving aside uncertainty, Tom centered his thoughts on Maria, the delivery driver whose story had ignited his passion. It was vital not just to present the narrative but to embody it. Arriving at the office, he found Alex deep in thought, staring blankly at his computer screen as if searching for answers among the digital chaos. Tom's approach sparked a spark of recognition in Alex's eyes that bolstered his confidence. We need to refine our approach, Tom said, taking a seat beside him. We're not just presenting today. We're sharing a vision. Maria's story can wow them, but we need to frame it correctly. You really think they'll get it? Alex's voice was laden with concern. If we come at it right, they won't have a choice but to see the value, Tom asserted. We need to harness the moving messages and personal connections people crave. Relatability. Setting up their presentation became an exercise in vulnerability for Tom. He focused intently on clarifying the emotional weights behind Maria's experiences. In 3 hours, they drafted testimonials from their community, transforming abstract ideas into relatable narratives. Gaining momentum, they restructured slides, ensuring the main thrust was that real lives were behind their proposals. As they finalized their work, Tom realized that their anxiety had shifted into purpose. This presentation was no longer simply about demonstrating a vision, it was about breathing life into it. He was transforming into someone who believed in the mission enough to lead with audacity. Yet, doubts loomed, whispering provocations that threatened to unseat his newfound resolve. The office conference room was buzzing when they finally arrived. Tom's heart raced as he spotted the board members gathered around the long table, some circling in muted discussions, others glued to their phones. Their expressions were stoic, and Tom couldn't help but feel the pressure of every eye focused on him. As he took his place, Alex nudged him, grounding him. He caught Alex's glance and recognized courage mirrored in his partner's intense stare. With a deep breath, they launched into the presentation. The opening went smoothly, a stream of logical points cascading from Tom's lips. Yet, when it was time to introduce Maria's narrative, he hesitated. Suddenly, Tom seized a moment of clarity. He made an executive decision, stepping away from the slides and into the center of the room as if to bridge a gap. We want to tell you about someone who exemplifies our vision, he said, holding the board's gaze with intensity. Maria is not just a driver, she is a voice, a reminder that we must connect with everyone around us. Her struggles and triumphs mirror the communities we want to engage. The room shifted. Conversations trailed off, and the board's attention transformed into something palpable. He had them leaning in as he recounted the personal yet universal themes of Maria's journey. Tom saw them begin to nod, their earlier apathy replaced by genuine intrigue. The presentation drew on shared energy. Their method wasn't merely transactional, it was redefining the organization's ethos. Yet, when they wrapped up and awaited feedback, Tom couldn't shake the feeling that they stood on the edge of a precipice. Would this bold vulnerability resonate or falter under the might of blatant corporatism? His pulse raced with anticipation and trepidation. The board members conferred in quiet deliberation. After what felt like eternity, the CEO leaned forward, brow furrowing deeper than usual. You seem to be placing a lot of weight on these emotional connections, he began, his tone laced with skepticism. But what does it mean for our bottom line? Tom's thoughts raced. The moment felt crucial, a fork in the road. The time had come to face the harsh realities of his ambition and confront the heart of their work. Could he drive home the importance of empathy in a world driven by data? Tom squared his shoulders, ready to step into the critical moment that could define his trajectory. What would he say next to turn skepticism into understanding? The atmosphere thickened with uncertainty, as Tom prepared to lay it all on the line. Tom's mind whirled at the CEO's question. The room felt smaller, every set of eyes narrowing into focused lenses, dissecting his next move. Would he double down on emotional appeals, or pivot toward cold, hard statistics? There was a moment of reckoning, a pin-drop tension. He had not come this far to back down. I understand your concern about the bottom line, Tom began, his voice steady despite the internal storm. But consider this, empathy and emotional connections are not just feel-good concepts. They're the linchpins of customer loyalty and brand identity. When we illuminate stories like Maria's, we are not merely appealing to the heart, we are connecting on a fundamental human level that transcends transactions. Pausing for effect, he looked around the room. Eyes flickered, some lingering in speculative curiosity while others glinted with skepticism. His time to strike was now. Maria's story is more than an anecdote, it is a strategic advantage. Consumers today crave authenticity. Our ability to truly relate to their experiences is what can set us apart in an increasingly saturated market. The board members exchanged glances. Tom noted the shift. Was it hope or mere contemplation? The CEO raised an eyebrow, intrigued. And where does that leave our financial forecasts? Tom leaned into the question, sensing this was an opening. Imagine our campaigns not just as marketing strategies but as community engagement tools. When we foster that connection, we build loyalty that translates into higher retention rates. Research shows that emotionally connected customers are 3 times more likely to recommend a brand. His heart raced. He didn't want to mislead them, he needed to ground his proposals in solid reasoning. If we can engineer our campaigns to reflect genuine values and narratives like Maria's, we can boost customer trust, which will ultimately reflect in our sales numbers. He paused for effect, letting the cogs turn in their heads, that he felt a surge of self-advocacy, an emerging strength he hadn't known he possessed. Sometimes, we need to step back from numbers to see the bigger picture. Maria means millions of others like her, and targeting this demographic effectively can yield long-term dividends. The board's expressions shifted, weighing his words. The stark contrast between emotional appeal and pragmatic strategy began to meld in the revelation of his argument. But one member, a particularly stern-faced woman, broke the silence. And what if we fail? What if this approach fails to resonate? A chill ran through Tom. This was the essence of his lingering fears, failure. Yet he clung to this moment, letting it crystallize within him. The risk of doing nothing is far greater than attempting to adapt. To step forward means to risk criticism, yes, but stagnation can lead to an even bigger detriment: obsolescence. His voice grew stronger, laced with conviction. We've seen companies falter because they became so rigid within their frameworks, they lost sight of the very people they serve. By addressing their deep-seated fears, we can forge a connection that allows us to grow both as a brand and as individuals. As he finished speaking, the room held its breath. Tom realized he had embraced a new part of himself in this moment. This was not merely about the presentation anymore, it was about the unfolding of his professional identity. The CEO rubbed his chin thoughtfully, and for the first time, the energy in the room shifted. Tom held his breath, anticipating their next move. Had he successfully transformed skepticism into opportunity? Suddenly, another board member interjected, "You're suggesting we invest not just in the narrative but in technology that facilitates this connection?" Tom's pulse quickened. Was this the moment he sought? The implications of aligning his emotional appeal with practical investment lit a fire within him. Yet, that fire was tempered by the realization that this battle was far from over. Secure footing was one thing, navigating the pathway laid ahead was another. He felt the weight of expectations rise in the air around him. In pursuit of this newfound purpose, there lay a treacherous terrain filled with detours and obstacles. Absolutely, Tom responded, eyes gleaming. If we want to actualize this connection. But before he could finish, the CEO leaned back, a thoughtful expression hardening across his face. This demands deeper coordination, strategy, and most importantly time. Are you prepared to lead this charge with us? As Tom swallowed hard, the world narrowed to the magnitude of the question. Could he truly commit to a cause that tested everything he thought he understood? The urgency gripped him. The possibility of failure tugged at him like a heavy anchor, but a flicker of resolve sparked to life. Could he rise as a leader who championed this transformative shift? Tom squared his shoulders, the weight of the moment pressing down as reality hung in the balance. The path ahead was uncertain, but it was time to step into the unknown. Would he reclaim his narrative amidst the risks this new endeavor demanded? Tom left the boardroom, adrenaline coursing through him, a mixture of ambition and anxiety swirling together. He had taken a leap, one that would define not just his career, but his very identity as a leader. As he walked down the sleek, fluorescent-lit corridor, he replayed the meeting in his mind, seeking both validation and clarity. The glances of his colleagues haunted him, a mix of doubt and glimmers of hope. In the sanctuary of his office, he paused to catch his breath. He took a moment to compose himself, staring out the window at the city skyline, bathed in the warm hues of the setting sun. It was beautiful, yet the vibrant display contrasted sharply with the turmoil twisting in his stomach. He was at the cusp of something monumental, but the stakes felt impossibly high. With a deep inhale, he reached for his notebook, a trusted companion filled with ideations and reservations alike. Flipping through the pages, he jotted down thoughts on blending technology with storytelling, skimming notes on consumer psychology as he sought to map the path ahead. What did it mean to lead this charge? What if he was not enough? His internal dialogue bubbled with each scribble, morphing into a dialogue of personal discovery. Maybe, he wrote, this is my chance to not just suggest ideas but embody the change I want to see. With every word, he felt a gradual release of tension. He could shift the narrative around him by embracing the very vulnerability he had feared. It could be his strength if he approached this endeavor with an understanding heart and a strategic mind. The words flew from his pen as he detailed not just action steps but his fears, his doubts, transforming those raw emotions into fuel for a fierce evolution. Suddenly, Tom was jolted from his thoughts as his phone buzzed. A message flashed on the screen. It was a notification from the company's social media account. There, below a post announcing their intention to embrace these new strategies, lay a comment from an unexpected source: I drive for the company. Let's see how real this compassion can be. Taken aback, Tom felt the gravity of the words. This was a real person, an employee, not just a statistic or a customer. Their comment wasn't merely skeptical, it was a challenge wrapped in their own uncertainty. He realized that for many, this shift represented both hope and fear, a delicate tightrope of expectation woven with the threads of trust. Rather than dismiss the message, Tom decided to engage. He replied directly, offering to meet for lunch and hear their thoughts. If they were willing to share their perspective, perhaps it could illuminate challenges he'd yet to consider. As he sent the message, the act felt liberating, a tangible step towards empathic leadership. But as the evening wore on, the potential for confrontation loomed large in his mind. What if this driver had insights that cut deeper than corporate strategy? Could this interaction reveal hidden truths about how his campaign might be perceived? Feeling the weight of this personal encounter loom in secrecy, something inside him flickered, a mix of optimism and apprehension. Would he be ready to confront the realities of his vision? He glanced around his now dim office, enveloped in the shadows that reflected his internal struggle. In the quiet hum of the evening, he sensed an urgency building. Tomorrow would not just be another day at work, but an awakening, a chance for transformation grounded in authenticity. As he shut down his laptop and prepared to leave, a thought struck him like lightning. The real evolution lay not solely in strategies or narratives, but in transparency and listening. The time was now to confront not only the expectations of the board but the unfiltered voices of those within the company, to face his fears head-on. Tomorrow would offer opportunities he couldn't anticipate, prompting him to bravely explore the connections he had previously shied away from. There was more at stake than corporate profit. This was about forging a path of genuine connection. As he stepped into the night, he felt invigorated. Was he ready to embrace this challenging journey and face the very doubts that had been triggers of his anxiety? The realization burned brightly within him as he locked up his office. He was standing on the threshold of transformation. And with that, the question haunted him like a specter in the dark: what revelations awaited him in tomorrow's meeting with the driver? The sun's first rays broke through the skyline, casting a golden light on Tom's cluttered desk as he arrived at the office. The weight of the previous night hung over him like a thick fog, every part of him poised for the upcoming meeting. He had been unable to shake the pulse of anticipation that beat in rhythm with his heart. Clarity seemed distant, but he clung to purpose, reminding himself that genuine connections would now guide his footsteps. As he made his way to the coffee station, he was surprised to find Claire, the marketing lead, already there. Her expression was uncharacteristically engaged, and as she poured her cup, she caught his eye. "Hey, ready for today?" she asked, her voice carrying both lightness and seriousness. Tom nodded, the answer not entirely true. Just a little anxious, I guess. She took a sip, fixing him with an intense gaze. Don't forget, if this is going to work, everyone needs to feel involved. You're not just selling a product, you're selling vision. Make them believe. Her words reverberated within him, fortifying his resolve. Yes, he had to make them believe not just in the strategy he envisioned but in the collective potential of their contributions. It was time to merge corporate ambition with genuine human connection. As the morning unfolded, the tension in the air grew palpable. Colleagues moved about with frenetic energy, unaware of how each buzz and whir around him reflected his internal conflict. Whenever he glanced at the clock, his mind spiraled through endless possibilities. Would the driver feel comfortable sharing insights? Would he open up about what truly motivated his work beyond statistics? His phone vibrated, breaking his concentration. It was a message from the driver confirming their lunch today. The reassurance it offered was undercut by an equal measure of dread. Was he ready for this? Tom's mind began to race, swirling with questions he needed to answer. He opened his notebook again, its pages filled with anticipation. He knew he needed to listen, really listen. But perhaps even more importantly, he needed to confront his own biases and fears. It wasn't just about how he viewed compassion, it was about understanding how others experienced it. Maybe I will be the one challenged today, he scribbled, feeling the tingle of vulnerability. What if my preconceived notions are obstacles to the change I seek? He tapped his pen against the page, reconsidering his approach. Instead of leading the conversation with pre-prepared questions, could he ask what the driver hoped to gain from this meeting? What expectations did he have of the new strategies? The clock struck noon, and the time for contemplation had passed. After a quick deep breath, Tom gathered himself, resolved to transform the impending conversation into a learning experience rather than an interview. As they sat across from each other in the cafeteria, the din of lunchtime chatter faded, narrowing his focus. The driver arrived with a relaxed demeanor, but there was a flicker of apprehension in the air. Instead of launching straight into corporate matters, Tom leaned back slightly, allowing for empathy to fill the space. Tell me about your role, he started, genuinely curious. What does it mean to you? As the driver spoke with confidence, Tom felt the conversation shift under the weight of sincerity. He listened, truly listened, realizing this man's experience added layers to the narrative he was crafting. He heard insights about customer interactions and what real compassion looked like in the workplace, ideas that shone light on what had felt like static noise in corporate discussions, but as the driver detailed a specific incident that revealed the company's shortcomings, Tom's heart raced. Their honesty was raw, revealing how disconnected the higher-ups could be from the everyday realities of the employees. The driver finished with a hint of challenge, it's a two-way street, you know. We can't build trust if we don't feel heard. In that moment, Tom grappled with a disturbing realization. Leadership did not just require direction and vision, it demanded being anchored in authenticity, facing discomfort, and fostering a culture where everyone could share their voice. Tom left the meeting, energized yet shaken, the urgency of his need for change burning brighter than ever. The path ahead was fraught with challenges, but Tom understood that tension was a key ingredient in transformation. As he returned to his desk, it dawned on him that the real work was just beginning. He tossed his thoughts into the notebook awaiting his attention, pondering how he would need to adjust his plans based on what he had learned. The question loomed as he prepared his next steps: how far was he willing to go to ensure that every voice, not just his own, was included in the story they were about to write? Tom felt the adrenaline of revelation coursing through him as he returned to his desk. The conversation with the driver had awakened a potent realization about leadership, the need to embrace vulnerability and create a safe space for dialogue. Yet, underlying that excitement was a nagging dread. What if he opened the floodgates for ideas and received a torrent of discontent instead? He recalled the driver's words, the emphasis on being heard, and realized that implementing this approach required more than mere intention. It was about tangible change that could ripple through the organization. Yet, how could he ensure that everyone felt empowered to voice their truths without fear of consequence? Sitting in front of his computer, Tom stared at the blank screen. Each word he wrote felt inadequate, like a contrived attempt to articulate the complexities of trust in a corporate setting. He paused, allowing himself to breathe deeply. The pressure to produce a perfect response was mounting, yet he mustered the courage to push away that impulse. This wasn't a performance, it was a journey they were all on together. Tom grabbed his notebook, the pages revealing a collection of thoughts and revelations he was ready to transform into action. Instead of structuring a traditional, sterile meeting to announce the new strategy, he envisioned something different. He would create an open forum, a safe space where employees could gather and share their thoughts, fostering an environment of inclusivity. An idea crystallized in his mind. Tom would draw inspiration from the driver's personal narrative. It struck him, the reason the driver had felt safe enough to share was the genuine interest he had expressed. What if he replicated that formula? He could encourage the team to share their own experiences regarding the company's culture, revealing the hidden strengths they may possess, but the challenge waited. He would need to overcome the fear of rejection from his peers, the possibility of being dismissed or criticized. What if they didn't want to participate? The dread loomed larger, casting shadows on the progress he envisioned. Accepting that discomfort was part of the process, Tom scribbled down his fears. Each word felt cathartic, stripping away the weight of paralysis. Yes, there would be resistance, but inertia was more dangerous than discomfort. He had to lead with authenticity, providing both the framework for dialogue and the freedom of expression. With new determination, he began drafting a proposal for a series of informal gatherings, addressing not only his team but the entire company. These forums would serve as platforms for shared storytelling and collaboration. Each voice mattered, and he would demonstrate that by engaging with the varied experiences across the organization. As he finalized the draft, another thought struck him: what if those gatherings were centered around themes surprising the audience, like compassion or resilience? Perhaps he could re-invite the driver to speak in one of these sessions. After all, he had an inspiring story to tell. However, would his decision appear patronizing? Would inviting him reinforce the very walls they were trying to break down? The tension within Tom grew once again. It was a delicate balance. He wanted to honor the man's experience while ensuring the discussion remained authentic and inclusive. Tom leaned back in his chair, tension rising in his chest. The success of his endeavor hinged on transparency and recognizing others, not just the higher-ups, but the drivers, the customer service representatives, and every unseen worker weaving through the fabric of the company. The clock ticked relentlessly, and he could no longer ignore the urgency pounding in his chest. He needed to act. But the deeper truth loomed over him: how could he champion this transformation if he didn't find the courage to share his own story and expose his vulnerabilities? The path to connection was already open, but was he truly ready to step through it? In that moment of clarity, he realized he would need to unearth his own truths, confront his fears, and where necessary, strip away the masks he had worn for so long. Tom silently vowed to explore the depths of his struggles as he prepared for his own revelation. The forthcoming gatherings were just the beginning, but the real transformation would come from the soul-searching he needed to undertake. What would he discover about himself in this uncharted territory he was determined to navigate? Each answer would lead to another question, beckoning him deeper, challenging him fiercely. With this new vision solidified in his mind, he felt the ground shift beneath him as he dialed the number of the driver. It was time to take the first step, not just in collaboration but in self-discovery. The moment was ripe for a revelation, but suddenly he found himself questioning: was he prepared for the truth that might emerge, not only from those around him but from within himself? The day had arrived, the echoes of expectation resonating through the halls of Tom's office as he prepared for the first informal gathering. This was at the crucible moment where he would share not only his newly formed strategies but also the insights gleaned from his conversations, particularly the one with the delivery driver. As his colleagues filed into the meeting room, an electric buzz filled the atmosphere. Tom stood at the front, heart racing, palms sweaty. This gathering represented the convergence of cherished ideas and raw vulnerabilities. With each familiar face before him, he recognized the undertones of skepticism mingling with curiosity. "Thank you all for being here today," Tom began. I've been reflecting on the direction we've taken as a company and the importance of every voice in our narrative. Today, we're not just talking about strategies, we're sharing stories. He paused to gauge their reactions and saw a mixture of interest and apprehension. I want to lead us in a dialogue fueled by honesty and openness. The air in the room shifted as he welcomed everyone to share themselves. He encouraged anecdotes of their experiences within the company, hopeful that the raw emotions behind the stories would illustrate a more genuine connection than any market statistic. What followed was mesmerizing. As colleagues began to share their truths, struggles about feeling underrecognized, triumphs in their roles, profound connections with customers, all intertwined with the themes of resilience and empathy, the room warmed with understanding. Tom felt each story peel back layers of preconceived notions, revealing the fabric of a company based on real human experiences. That he listened intently, reminded of the driver's emphasis on the importance of hearing voices from every corner. Then, at a pivotal moment, it was his turn. He took a deep breath, the weight of anticipation resting heavily on his shoulders. I realize that I've often been too focused on results and expectations, too driven by fear of failure. But I want to share that I, too, have struggled with what it means to be a leader in our fast-paced world. He paused, gathering his thoughts, aware of the vulnerability he was displaying. I've faced pressure not just from the board, but from the shadow of my father's legacy. It often made me afraid to innovate and share what I truly believed, fears that I now recognize I need to overcome. As he spoke, he watched as the faces around him transformed, empathy blooming as they related to his struggles. The communal space connected them, bridging their aspirations and values into a cohesive force united in purpose. Tom felt a weight lift as he embraced this authenticity. He wasn't just a leader, he was a collaborator and a fellow traveler in their collective narrative. With bold momentum, he introduced the driver, inviting him to share his story. Tom realized that the lines between leadership and nurturing a culture are blurred, and the only way through was together. The delivery driver stepped forward, his presence radiating sincerity as he spoke. His words offered a poignant reflection of the realities Tom had heard and the transformative potential of the voices saying, "We matter." As the session progressed, Tom noticed a shift in the energy, a palpable transformation. Colleagues engaged in dialogue, built on empathy, sharing ideas on how they could drive the vision forward. Conversations that had once been stilted and hesitating flowed freely, fueled by newfound connection and commitment. That evening, exhausted yet exhilarated, Tom stared at the city lights from his office window, a landscape now imbued with possibilities. It was not simply the name of the company that mattered, it was the heart, the essence of collaboration that he had ignited. Tom had proven to himself that vulnerability was not weakness, it was strength. By embracing change, he was forging his path, one that promised fulfillment through connection rather than fear. The next day, as he arrived early, the office pulsed with a renewed energy. Employees were discussing ideas from the gathering, bubbling over with enthusiasm. Something had shifted profoundly. Their mission was being defined not merely by corporate numbers but by the stories of those whom they served and supported. Tom stepped into the spotlight, now a leader who pushed boundaries, shared journeys, and invited others along for the ride. He had dismantled the barriers of tradition, proving to himself and the board that progress was achievable through vulnerability and compassion. In that moment of realization, he felt confident, recognized in his competence. Tom had not only saved his company, but he had reclaimed his narrative as a pioneer who dared to embrace change, to shun the weight of legacy and instead carve a new legacy of collaboration, growth, and understanding. Now was the time to build upon this momentum. The road ahead was one of continuous learning and connection, and Tom was ready. He would lead not just with vision but with a heart open to every voice, the key to their ultimate success. This was the moment that defined him, a moment of liberation, where he had proven that leadership is not solitude but unity within a shared purpose. Now it's your time to embrace this transformational journey. Don't hesitate. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, it truly makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about this ending, your voice matters. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to show your support now, and together, let us champion the power of personal overcoming stories.